if he could persuade the United States through Kirill Dmitriev and Witkoff to accept proposals that would lead to a very weak peace, enabling Putin to resume aggression, in 6 months, 12 months, or maybe even 36 months, he may go for it.
President Putin has warned that Russia is ready if Europe wants war and accused the continent's leaders of trying to sabotage a Ukraine peace deal. We've translated part of the speech.
They have no peace agenda. They are on the side of war. Even when they claim to introduce changes to Trump's proposal, we can clearly see all these changes are aimed at one thing: to block the entire peace process. They put forward demands that are absolutely unacceptable for Russia, and they know it. The goal is to later blame Russia for the end of the peace process. We are not planning to fight Europe. I have said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly decides to wage war against us and starts it, we are ready right now. If Europe chooses to start a war, the situation can very quickly reach a point where there'll be no one left for us to negotiate with.
Well, those comments came ahead of the meeting between President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Let's speak to Ambassador John Herbst, who is a former US ambassador to Ukraine. Ambassador Herbst, a warm welcome. Thanks for being with us. Strong words from President Putin there. How do you read them?
It's very simple. He understands that Europe does not want a capitulation peace, which is what the 28-point document was. And he understands that Europe does have some influence on President Trump and on U.S. position. He wants to make sure that influence is minimal. So Russian propaganda has been pushing the Europeans as warmongers for months. And now Putin's just raised the decibel level a bit.
OK. Your assessment of Europe's position here. Europe is preventing the US administration from achieving peace on Ukraine. That's what Putin's had to say.
Well, Putin wants effective political control of Ukraine. For that, he needs to take a lot more Ukrainian territory, but he wants to minimize American opposition to his aggression. So if he could persuade the United States through Kirill Dmitriev and Witkoff to accept proposals that would lead to a very weak peace, enabling Putin to resume aggression, in 6 months, 12 months, or maybe even 36 months, he may go for it. But of course, Europe understands what those 28 points meant, just as Zelensky understands it, and as do Americans who recognize the United States has a vital interest in preventing a Russian victory in Ukraine. So Putin is trying to say that this opposition to the 28 points is that means because Europe wants war to continue. When Europe wants what Trump states he wants, and I think Trump actually does want, which is a durable peace, not a peace of capitulation.
And it's within the US's interest for that war to continue. Predominantly, why would that be? Because they are going to receive large amounts of money for weaponry. They say that they don't want to support Ukraine financially anymore, but they're very open to supplying weapons paid for by Europe.
I find that to be a crazy, amazing question, not a good one. Look, the United States has benefited from the absence of major war in Europe since NATO was established at the end of World War II. Russia is now, as a major power, fighting a war in Europe against a medium-sized power, and Putin's aims go beyond Ukraine. So we have an aim in making sure Putin does not take effective political control of Ukraine. It's not clear that the administration recognizes that as clearly as I've just stated it. But Trump has, in a sense, recognized it when he said he wants a durable peace, not one that enables Putin to take effective political control of Ukraine or Putin to renew a war later on. The 28 points includes elements that would enable Putin to take control, because he gets take control of much more of Ukraine, because Ukraine would be giving up the defensible positions in Western Donbass that Putin's large invasion has not delivered to Russian control. That's my point.
Okay, look, it is widely expected that the current version of the peace plan, which was constructed alongside Ukraine, will have elements favourable to Russia added back into it. What do you expect those to be? Just to be really plain, will that centre around political control of Ukraine?
It won't. That issue will not come up. But if the points in the 28-point plan relating to giving Russia the fortified territory of Western Donbass, which again Moscow has been trying to take since the big invasion and has failed to take. If that were to happen, then Russia would be in a position to roll through open country all the way to the Dnipro River. So that's a very foolish idea. And if the point of limiting Ukraine's military, not Russia's military, is put back in, that also makes it easier for Russia to renew war on much more favorable terms. And then, of course, there's also the very strange language about the Russian frozen assets, which would wind up giving Russia a greater proportion of those assets than the victim, Ukraine.
Yeah.
And also the NATO point. So all these things are grossly skewed in Moscow's direction. It may be that there are members of the Trump team that would willingly do that. I'm not sure President Trump goes along with it. Just as he was not fully involved, from what we've seen, in the 28-point plan that was when it was presented to Ukraine. He was involved, but in a rather cursory fashion. So Trump says he wants a durable peace. I believe him. And a durable peace cannot include those elements which would make it easier for Putin to conquer Ukraine in the future.
Do you think this new revised version, if that's what comes of today's meeting, will be more durable? Will it be a durable peace plan? What kind of faith do you have in what would be achieved today?
I don't think Russia would agree to a peace deal which does not give it those very favorable elements, making its control of Ukraine more likely, and at a much lower cost than their kamikaze troop attacks in Ukraine, which are decimating the Russian military. So I think the optimism we're hearing from the administration about getting a deal is not going to be warranted by the outcome. Again, there may be people in Trump world who are happy to give Russia this great advantage to renew aggression in the future. I'm not sure President Trump will ultimately do that.
Now, Putin's envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, posted an AI-generated video this morning illustrating plans for an underground tunnel between Alaska and Russia, dubbed the Putin-Trump Bridge.
Sometimes a dream is not a fantasy. It just takes time for it to become reality.
What do you make of that, Ambassador Herbst? Are they using similar tactics to to those that Trump used ahead of the Gaza-Israel ceasefire?
This is part of a Kremlin seduction campaign to persuade President Trump that there are enormous gains to be made for the U.S. economy in Russia. Gains which we've never seen during the Soviet period of détente, during the 1990s when the United States and Russia were partners. American businesses in Russia have not prospered. They've often done rather poorly, in part because of corruption, in part because it's not in Russia's interest to help American businesses do well in Russia. But as part of a plan of seduction so the United States does not pay attention to its strategic interests in Europe, I can see the Russians trying it. The question is, will this become a decisive factor for the United States? This is to use a Russian word, a pokazu, something for show, designed to help the Kremlin achieve its goals. It would be useful for Mr. Dmitriev to explain why Russian national security doctrine calls the United States Russia's principal adversary.
Look, thank you so much for being with us, Ambassador John Herbst, who is a former US ambassador to Ukraine.